SilmFilm Script Discussion, Season 2, Episode 1. We're trying to get through the Awakening of the Elves.
10 seconds.
Karita says the purpose of the Elves is to be awesome, sing, and make things that are super cool.
To
a degree, yes, I agree.
They're the personification of art in Tolkien's world. So, yeah.
Sure, is worried about what the conflict for the episode is specifically, but Atanvarnu, it is the first episode, which means that the first episode should always focus on setting up that whole season's everything. So the conflict for the season and the conflict for the first episode are essentially the same thing, because you want to be setting the tone for the other episodes and yeah. So I mean, how we're going to express that conflict specifically is setting up the issue that Arwen is conflicted about what's going on with her mother. Like that is the question, the smaller question that's throwing all of these larger issues into relief for us, so that we can get at them.
Yeah, and whether what our response to evil should be. Now we showed a response to evil back in season 1, and we showed that ultimately you're gonna have to fight evil.
We're not resolving the first episode's conflict.
Right, we're introducing it, and that's it.
Right.
Well, what we might resolve is this idea that Arwen is kind of almost myopic a little bit here, where she only sees the shadow's effect on her own life in a way, or she's focusing on that at any rate. Where Celeborn is going to bring out that no, the shadow's always been there.
Yeah,
it's been with us since the beginning. It's how you deal with that that's going to be the key. And
but
we're not going to really answer that question in this episode. We're not going to answer what the correct response is.
If you're asking, like, what is the arc for the episode, I would say that Arwen goes from pessimistic to hopeful. That would be like the main character shift for the episode. Like, she goes to Lothlorien. She's kind of pissed off about everything. She's moody and gloomy and all that. But by the end of the episode, she's, she hasn't decided, whether she's right or Grandma and Grandpa are right or her mom's right. She doesn't know what the answers are, but she's not miserable anymore. She's not saying, like, everyone's doing the wrong thing, and I don't know what to do about that. So
I have
one thing. Sorry, one thing that shows up with the elves in Lord of the Rings that you don't know about because you don't have any of this backstory is their sadness. The sadness of the elves, the melancholy of the elves comes through Lord of the Rings, even not knowing why the elves are sad and what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
We should probably do this.
I don't know why, but it makes me sad.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for some reason, we don't understand it, but it's really sad. Yeah. Arwen should be we don't know why, but she's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, that makes her the audience cipher. Basically, that's exactly the right angle to take on it. We have a character that fills in for the audience and kind of grounds the audience in, like, okay, this is the situation that you already know if you've read the books, and if you haven't, let us break it down for you even further.
Yeah. Adam Verno is asking where we're going with the main narrative.
Story.
So the arc for the main narrative is we start out showing just how dangerous and scary the world is.
Right.
And
this is actually why it is important not to start with the first elf opening their eyes on the shore of
we don't need to jump back on that particular can of worms, but where we're going is we're going to illustrate from the elves' perspective the War of the Powers, the war to end all, the war to begin all wars, and we get Orome's return. Is Orome's return to the elves at Quevenin after the battle?
No, I think
after the council.
I think we can show the first meeting with, because I mean, so going back to fear and all that stuff. One of the things that Corey kept talking about was the difference between fear and awe. And I don't think we should be given to understand that they're wholly separate things. I would say maybe that one is way more negative and the other is maybe perhaps more positive. But I think they're kind of the same, two sides of the same coin, and just that's just kind of being more specific and being more detailed about the different kinds of fear-related emotions that they end up dealing with. So you have Orome's thing where he comes in and he's like that. Seeing that for the first time seems important. Where you're seeing it's a new kind of fear basically for them, because they have the Dark Rider and that's kind of primal fear, where fear of the dark, fear of teeth, fear of spooky monster stuff,
tables.
and then see, like, having Oromë come through the trees for the first time and just like everybody's like, oh dang, like we've never seen anything like this before, and we're not sure if we like it or not.
Okay, but where we're gonna head with this is we're gonna see the battle of the powers from the elves' perspective. Okay,
it's a new perspective.
And then what?
That fight too.
Right. We haven't seen that before. So we kind of know what's going on, and maybe we can even bring back the musical themes from the battle to kind of clue the audience in on what's happening. But then what? Like, do we leave them there, or do we have Oromë come back and talk to them? This wasn't addressed. I just went through the episode notes. This wasn't addressed in the podcast.
The text didn't really tell us to include the battle at all.
To me, the battle is fear of the natural world, right? Because you've got sort of the primal fears, but that's definitely personified into the Dark Rider. Then you have the awe of the gods, and then the battle. Like, they don't get a lot of context for the battle. It just kind of happens, and they don't know necessarily why it's being fought, and the after effects are primarily just natural disasters, basically.
Yeah. Well, they're gonna feel earthquakes and stuff. Does the
and I mean, you'll see lightning and all that.
Out of Arno asks, does this battle significantly alter the landscape and such? I don't think it's going to really alter their landscape that much, because the Valinor are taking specific care not to have that happen.
Yeah, like there should be earthy quakes and
they'll feel it, and there'll be storm force winds and stuff like that.
Trees can maybe fall down a little bit, but like it doesn't drastically. It's not the destruction of Almarin or anything.
Yeah, earth rumbling, lightning, etc.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. But it should be like the first time they've experienced an earthquake type of thing. Where they're like, oh, okay, this is not like. I have
it's not so distant that it doesn't affect them at all.
Earthquake for the first time, and it is a powerful experience for some people.
I remember the first time I got anywhere near a tornado, and it was pretty. It's pretty epic. It's craziness. It's a new level of craziness. So
something like that. Basically.
The question's going to be, though, is do we leave them there, or do we leave them after Oromë comes back? Because I feel like we have to see him coming back.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to see Oromë twice.
Yes.
Yep.
Have the elves see him before the battle, not really know who he is or what that's all about, and then have him interact with them again after the battle. Like, I want to have two separate. I know that wasn't discussed, but that to me seems to be the obvious way to.
Yeah. I just woke up and I've been alive for about 2 minutes, but I'm guessing this isn't normal, says Bob Way.
I don't know. They live for I would say hundreds, if not thousands of years before well, maybe not thousands, but at least
Hundreds, definitely.
at least dozens of years before.
Well, it's at least dozens of Valiant years, which multiply by 10, so it becomes centuries.
There you go.
All right.
I'm not good with the math.
All right.
I blame Trish for this one. This is all Trish's fault.
I dropped it, but like this goes back to the guy who posted exactly one time about time and all of that. Elves are immortal, and they don't necessarily feel the weight of years, but they still experience years in the same way that humans experience years, right? So
they experience time in the same way,
they have
but they don't. But it doesn't
mean
not as much to them. Like I ran out of time to do what I need to do this week. Doesn't enter into their minds because they have a bazillion weeks to work with.
But Peter Jackson tried to do something in Lothlorien where people spoke more slowly there. So if you ever wondered why Celeborn's dialogue is what it is in Lord of the Rings, he was trying to show that, people who have unlimited time on their hands take their time talking. Like, he was trying to do something with that. I don't think it worked well. Celeborn kind of just came across sounding like he was on drugs. It just really spaced out.
So
tell me where his
okay. So the question is now, because in yesterday's episode, in yesterday's talk, they talked about having the ambassadors come back, mirroring having Oromë coming back at the end of episode 1, having the ambassadors come back in episode 2. What's that mean? Nothing. That means nothing. Having the ambassadors come back in episode 2, but you don't get a word from them. Is that what we will want to see here for Oromë, that he comes back after the council, after the battle, and we don't get it. We just see him as his arrival, which we will then explain in episode 2, because we're going to have a flashback.
I would like to see him twice in this episode.
Okay. Well, no, I understand. I'm getting that. I'm saying, does he say anything? Do we get any dialogue at that point?
No, I want to see the scene where he interacts with them.
Okay.
I mean, I think that would be certainly that.
I mean, the second time.
Yeah.
You want to see that here in episode 1, not episode 2. Okay.
Like, so that's a good place for the episode to turn, where we've experienced like all of the really scary, big, primordial, huge world stuff, and now he comes back and is like, okay, everything's gonna be fine, I promise.
So we want to see him coming back, making the invitation. Do we want to see him selecting the ambassadors?
No. That all has to happen in episode 2, because the Valar have to make the decision to invite them first.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't actually.
Like, I would actually.
Oromë doesn't invite the.
Right.
We don't see the invitation here.
That'll be Orme's third visit, if you will.
So what is he saying to them in this visit then?
Well, actually, I mean. So he doesn't make the invitation on his second visit. That's on his third visit.
I'm suggesting that.
What? How does that work?
Well, what she's saying is he comes back to let them know that everything's going to be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing is, we have a few things he needs to do, and he needs to do them all at different times. One, he has to see them before the battle to say, I found the elves. He doesn't need to talk to them then. They can run away from him, but he needs to see them. Second,
that's an interesting idea.
Well, I mean, we can discuss how we want it to go. Second time is after the battle. He has to check in with them, make sure they're all still alive, and then report back to the Valar.
You didn't know great, did you? You're still here?
Yeah, well, and then that involves the actually speaking with them and finding out who they are and a little bit. Then goes back to Valinor and discusses with the Valar what to do. which results in a third visit saying, "Hey, you've been invited to come check this place out."
Okay. Well, because what I think would be interesting to do is to have, if his second visit is taking place after the council at which the invitation is decided upon, that his second visit takes place after they've already had that discussion, after the Valinor have already had the discussion, and then we show that discussion in flashback in episode 2, kind of. And what we're doing here is maybe even have that discussion on the completed battlefield.
One thing that would solve.
He's coming fresh from the battle.
One issue that would solve would be the problem of travel, of getting the elves to Valinor, the ambassadors, because if he issues the invitation at the end of episode 1, and then we kind of like step back in time to see the Valar discussing this and sending Oromë off to issue that invitation, and we're staying with the Valar and they're like preparing for the, I don't know, whatever. And then we see the ambassadors get chosen and everything. And then when we see them in Valinor again, it's like, oh, well, we jumped in time. Like the time jump is obvious.
Yeah.
So that it might help.
I'm not opposed to having Oromë show up at Cuiviénen 3 times necessarily in the same episode. I don't think that's bad.
Oh, the third time would be in episode 2. It's only twice in the first episode.
Well, you were saying end episode 1 with invitation.
Well, what we're saying is that what I'm proposing, Karina says that they're going to be putting chocolates on the pillows, airing out.
I don't know what they are.
Well, it could be when they actually build Valinor.
Oh yeah, they could do that, huh?
Yeah. So the timeline I'm proposing here is that Oromë comes across the elves. He either talks to them or they flee in terror, whatever we figure out there, and then he leaves. They fight the battle.
Right.
Okay. Immediately after the battle, before even the trial of Melkor, okay, they're on the battlefield. The discussion takes place as to what they're going to do with the elves. They just
you're saying
decide. I'm not saying we see all this in episode 1. What I'm saying is that this is the timeline. This is the actual timeline I'm recommending.
Right. Okay. I thought you were saying the elves were talking about stuff, and I'm like,
no.
I don't think they know anything about it.
No. The Valar discuss what they're going to do with the elves. They decide to make the invitation. Then Oromë goes back to meet with the elves.
Right.
Okay. Now, what's going to happen then is that while Oromë is choosing the 3 ambassadors, the Valar go back to Valinor, build Valinor, so that when the ambassadors arrive, that's what
there's
they see.
There's something for them to see.
Right.
Well, I think it could
to the supernaturally glowing trees.
Right. Well, even beyond that, I think there just needs to be a realization, like, they're kind of smaller than we thought.
Yes.
Everything here is too big for them. Like we did it. Yeah. Oops. I kind of wanted to be like an oops moment where everybody kind of looks over. I mean, I don't want to play it too much for laughs, but I do kind of want like a moment where everybody kind of looks over at not Toolcast at
Oromë.
No, not Oromë. Who's the smith?
Aule.
Yeah, everybody looks over at Aule and like, what happened, man? This was your area. Like, everything's way too huge for them. They're like this big. And like,
well, it would be interesting if Aule because Aule made the dwarves really small, right?
Yeah, exactly. So he might make it all dwarf size.
And he was saying, I told you they were going to be smaller. I told you they were going to be smaller than.
Like, I would love for that to be a little moment where everybody's kind of like not squabbling, but they're like, they can't live here. This is absurd. It's like,
That could be a
they're not
discussion
supposed to live here, you idiots.
Because that would fit if the whole theme is that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think
thematically, just sort of like, just things that suggest that they're not as all know. Like, I think people are kind of gonna assume that because we're dealing with quote unquote the gods, they're just sort of all knowing, and every opportunity that we get to show them screwing up,
some moments where that doesn't happen.
Ducks rotting tomatoes. I'm like, ducks rotting tomatoes.
Oh, because she said, please forgive me for this comparison. I know it is wrong, but this reminds me of the part in Twilight where the vampires make a meal for the human.
Oh, that sounds horrible. I'm sure it's absurd.
Well, it's a comic scene where they're in the kitchen trying to figure out how to cook, and none of them ever cook because being vampires, they don't actually cook food. So they're like being idiots
Italian
about
food, of course, since that is
the
best food.
They were trying to make pasta for her or something, and
that's also known as better food. Yes.
Yeah, and her reaction was like, "No, guys, I knew you weren't going to be having dinner, so I ate before I came. Like I knew that. Like, thanks, but I'm not really hungry. Like, stop."
Stop burning the pasta. You're supposed to add water.
So, if we see Oromë coming back at the end of episode 1 in this timeline, if that's what we see,
so there would be no.
Do we actually show him presenting the invitation, or do we?
I think that's how you like close out that's kind of what you close out the episode on, where he kind of, makes his bold proclamation. We've decided that you shall come to Valinor and see all the cool stuff that we made. And everybody's kind of like, oh, that is a huge cliffhanger. End of episode.
Right, and then you'd have to start episode 2 with that same scene and what the Elves' reaction is. Right, so you can get away with only having Oromë show up twice total. Or
I like that better personally.
Or we can not have the invitation until we see the Valor make the decision to make the invitation, but that means we have to wait till episode 2 for that.
Well, what we could do is have Oromë come back and find a way to get them to overcome their fear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because if we show them almost universally terrified of him when he first arrives, then
absolutely.
But if we can find a way for they may actually show fear.
Are they going to Valor themselves?
He joins in there singing.
What if he does that on the second
visit? That scene's gonna be long. Like when he shows
what
up
if he does that on the second? Yeah.
But does he change his appearance to less terrifying?
Right, that too. Like, I think that the way that he gains their trust is by joining their singing and making himself smaller.
Not a good look at all, Karina. Like it's a primal fear. It's fear of the dark. It's fear of poisonous snakes and spiders and animals. So I mean, he's a threat and a shadow. They kind of know the general shape of him, I guess, but nobody gets a good look at the Dark Rider. Yeah.
Have we established that the Dark Rider is Sauron himself? Is that where we're going in this?
Yes, he is. No, we're not going to show that.
Well, Melkor, not Sauron.
But Melkor isn't going to. I mean, after this moment, if we want to show. If there's going to be any more taking of elves, Melkor is not doing it.
Yeah. But the original Dark Rider, well, here I wanted to say
it's supposed to be Melkor. I agree.
Yeah, but
it doesn't really matter
to me.
Who it is
the angle that I wanted to take on this was actually that there never was a physical Dark Rider, but this necessitated that. All of the elf kidnapping happened before they were awake, so it doesn't really work that well. Because mostly what got away from this very quickly in the first season.
By the way, I real quick, we're gonna take a quick break, and then when we come back, I want to answer a question that Phil Menzies brought up on the forums about the timeline. So, all right, we'll be back in a minute.